So yeah, exactly like Jay said, I was having some trouble trying to figure out how to use Qualtrics in an efficient way. I had a problem where I basically needed to make roughly 200 of exactly the same question with only one piece of text that was different. And I was like, I'm not doing this by hand. And I just flat refused to do it by hand. So I figured out a way to basically use this thing called an advanced format, TXT or doc, which Qualtrics is a form that Qualtrics can use to upload. And I kind of did this sort of MacGyvered script that basically creates this document for you. So I'm going to walk through it. I have like a, I think a reprex, like a reproducible example of this. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can you all see my GitHub? And then if I do this, can you see my R? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, great. So yeah, so if you want to download the code and follow along, the code is in this GitHub link that I just sent. You can also find it here, just GitHub Claire Robertson -code snippets. And you're going to want to open this sample survey creation.r file. And I'll talk about these other two in a second. Okay, so this is the code, and I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. If you have questions, though, I'm happy to answer, so feel free to stop me. So the first thing we're going to do with this is we're going to load all of our required libraries. Cool. Then we're going to use my favorite kind of like online data set, which is this Gutenberg project for R, which allows you to download the full text of certain like not open source, but royalty-free books. So I'm going to download the full text of one of my favorite books from growing up, which is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And then I'm just taking off the top part. So let me just shrink this down so that I can get where I need to be. Okay, so now we're going to look at Alice, and what we see is we have chapter 1, down the rabbit hole, and all of the text kind of working its way down here. Cool. So let's say that what we wanted to do, what we were trying to do is we were going to create a survey to examine reading comprehension. And let's say we wanted to see how reliably individuals could extract meaning from random 5-word chunks from a common children's book. This is not probably a task you would have to do, but it works just to show the creation of the survey. And this is a way we could make a validation survey that tests about 20 of these 5-word chunks. So what we're going to do is, and if you've seen any of the NLP workshops I've done, you probably know this unnest tokens code that I have right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this down into 5-word chunks using unnest tokens, and we're going to break it into n-grams, which is number of tokens in kind of one chunk, and n equals 5. So let's do that. Boom. So now if we go look at Alice n-gram, we have some NAs. We're going to clean those up in a second. And then we have, as you can see, these chunks of 5 words, some of which make sense, some of which make sense, some of which are pretty like nonsensical. So now we're going to just clean the data. We're going to take out the n-gram, the NAs in the n-gram category. We're going to just select the text. That's all we want. And we're going to create an ID number. So that's all we're doing in this line. There you go. So a little bit cleaner. Now we're just going to randomly sample 20 of these chunks. And I set the seed for, I guess, when I originally wrote this script. So we're going to set the seed there. We're going to pull 20 unique numbers from anywhere in the length of the n-grams we have. So basically just 20 of any of those possible chunks of 5. Great, we have our set here. And now we're just going to pull out the ones that we're going to use in the survey. So we have this survey sample. And now we, as you can see, we have 20 chunks of 5, and that's what we're going to use. Okay, that's all stuff you can do with your own data very easily. Now what we're going to do is we're going to basically only want the text. So at this point, the only thing we want in our whole data frame is just one column that is a text variable. So we have, now it is truly just the text. And that's important because what we're going to do next is basically, our end goal is to create a TXT document, not a CSV, not something that's chunked off. So we want this to have as little extraneous information as possible. Okay, now we're going to create some labels. And this is where I actually want to go back to the GitHub for a second. And I want you to open this links.txt file. And in here, what you can see is there's this link that's called info on advanced formatting doc and txt files from Qualtrics. So if you open this, this is basically the different ways that you can import and export surveys. And you can do this using a QSF, which we all know and is very easy, but you can also do it using this thing called an advanced format TXT file. And here we're going to be using these Qualtrics codes, which is basically these double bracket tags that tell Qualtrics in an advanced format what you want it to do. It's not HTML, it's not really R, it's this like very specific thing that Qualtrics needs. Don't bother memorizing this, like just look it up. You'll be able to find the things that you need. There's this, and then the second link I put is another like big repository. Somebody, I think it was just a community member, basically wrote out all of the tags that is recognized by Qualtrics. It's not everything Qualtrics can do, but it's a really good base and it gets you close to what you need. So as you can see, all the tags go in brackets, and I will go through the ones that are in the survey. If you wanted to create different tags, like if you wanted, instead of a multiple choice question, you wanted a rank choice, you could look up how to do that using this format. And it's mostly just advanced format TXT will be your Google keyword there. Cool. So that's what I'm doing here. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to create the TXT chunk for each question, and then we're going to loop through it iteratively. So what we're going to do is the first thing we want to create the header label, which is, I'm telling Qualtrics this is a question, and the DB stands for descriptive block. So there's no like choices. They're not going to make any choice when I add this text. It's not like a multiple choice question. So we create that, and it just comes in over here in quotes. It's just a character value. And then the header is, please read the following piece of text. And if you noticed, I have these two little BRBRs at the end. So this is where it's a little bit confusing. Qualtrics does read some HTML. So you can use that to say, after you put this in, I want 2 line breaks. And that just helps you format each question so that it looks nice. So they're not like wedged next to each other. Then let's say we have our little piece of text and we want to ask 2 questions about that text. We want to ask, how much semantic meaning does the above text contain, and how negative or positive do you think this text is, right? So those are the 2 questions we want to ask. So first what we're going to do is we're going to create our label, and the label here is question. So tells Qualtrics this is a question. MC is multiple choice. Single answer says, I don't want you to select it's both no meaning and lots of meaning. You can only pick one. And horizontal means I want it laid out like a Likert scale. So I want it not going down, but this way. You can do vertical, you could do multi-answer if you wanted them to be able to check all the above. You can do all of those things. Again, that's where you want to look up the different types of codes. Then we have our text for question. So how much semantic meaning does the above text contain? And then we have our choices. And this is where I found this to be both a little bit annoying, but also certainly the most helpful part of this script. You can plug in all of your choices if you have repetitive questions here. You do not have to go in and like rich text format, change them and center them and all that nonsense. Like you can do it all here, which is really helpful. So for the choices, we want to actually create a 1-column data frame. Again, we need to name it text so that it's able to get R-binded with our question later. That'll be important. So you want to name it the same thing that you've named your vector, your data frame of questions that you're going to ask or text that you're going to sample or whatever. So here, see, we named it text. And if you go into the survey sample, it's called text. You just need to make sure it's named the same thing. And here you're going to tell Qualtrics that we're using advanced choices. So I'm saying different things, like basically like this isn't just like a single like definitely yes, probably yes, maybe probably no, maybe or definitely no. You're saying like, no, I have specific things, I want them in this like very specific way that I'm laying out. So you say advanced choices, then, and this is again kind of annoying, for each choice you have to put before it, and you can see I just highlighted all of them, choice. That tells it, okay, so here's where the breaks are. This is basically the equivalent of a comma in R. It's saying here's a value, now here's a value, now here's a value. And I have, so one break, no meaning. When that comes up in the survey, and I'll show you the end result, it's going to be like one line break, no meaning underneath. So it's not going to be like one no meaning all on one line. You're going to get one no meaning, the way that a Likert scale looks. And then you have all your other choices down here, and you can do anything you want with these.
Sorry, I'm just, so you've decided to only give 1 and 4
and 7
labels.
Correct.
Theoretically, you could do all of them.
You totally could, yeah. I just find that sometimes that looks a little bit clunky.
It looks too cramped.
Yeah, but you absolutely could. And you could also say, make these, 1, 2 fish. Like there's nothing, it doesn't, Qualtrics is going to do whatever you tell it to do using this format.
I have a quick question. Maybe I'll just pop in here so people can hear me. So I can see where you're going. This is really cool. One question I have is, and maybe you'll get to this, when you translate this to what it actually physically looks like, where do you make choices of like, oh, it looks too crammed. I thought like this sort of no meaning. First, I tried all of them, and then I tried just 1, 4, and 7 because it looked too crammed. Like, is there any way of sort of like previewing what this would look like once you actually see the survey before you write all this code, so you can kind of play around with each?
Yeah, so what I would recommend is downloading the, I'm gonna go back to over here. I have here samplesurvey.txt. This is like, you could download this and upload it into Qualtrics and you'll see it all immediately.
Okay.
So you can, gives you a sense of what it's going to look like. And I'm gonna show you what it looks like at the end. So yes and no. The other thing you could do if you wanted is you could sample, and this is actually how I created the script. You could just pull one piece of text, write all of this stuff, and then basically have it be a single question. And you just edit it and then kind of continuously upload until you see what it looks like. Okay. And then you just put it in the loop. And it's like, you don't have to do it for every single question. Yeah. So the answer is like yes and no, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense.
Cool. So great.
Survey as a .txt and then just see.
Ooh, I don't know. You might want to try that. I actually.
Will it transfer like a current survey into a TXT?
If that works.
Maybe just click on export survey.
Yeah. If you already have a Qualtrics survey though, you might just want to do it as a QSF because that's going to transfer really easily, but I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we're going to publish this, I won't say what I was going to say. Sometimes it was challenging to figure this stuff out. Okay, so now we have question 2. This is extremely similar to the first question. I just want to show you how you could add more than one kind of question to each single piece of text. And again, the label is the same. It's a question, it's multiple choice. I want single answer and I want it horizontal. And then again, we have the advanced choices here and all of the different choices of text that I've put. And you could again say positive, somewhat positive, neutral. You could add it as much as you want. Then we want to create a page break. And this basically, the way I wanted to set my survey up was I wanted each time they clicked an arrow to get a new piece of text and 2 questions. I didn't want like a bunch all on one. You can add these wherever you want. You don't have to add them after every question. This was just, I was doing a validation study. This made the most sense to me. So let's run all of this. There you go. So we have it all down here, except for our choices, which are data frames. And again, this was very much my like, this works sort of thing. If you can figure out a cleaner way to do it, I applaud you, and please let me know. That's why I put this in a GitHub so I can change the script and update it. And then there's an even better version. So if you have a better idea, please let me know. Now, what we're going to do is we're about to go into the loop. So we're going to initialize our survey data frame with this, which is just this text variable as a character, and it's just blank. There's nothing in it, but there is a text variable. And now let's talk about the loop. So I'm going to walk you through it, and then I'm going to run it, and it runs super fast. And I did this with 200 questions, and it ran super fast, like a second, if that. So that's also really convenient. Okay, so what we have here is it's a for loop. We have for one in the number of rows in your survey sample, the number of pieces of text you want to put in your survey. And we're creating this thing called loop text, which is basically just the single piece of text that you want that you're going to use in that single loop. So for example, if in the first iteration when I equals 1, the only thing we will get if we look at survey sample is this, not a moment to think. And that's what we're pulling out there. This is a little extra thing. And this kind of goes back to Tessa, what you were saying about like, can you see how it looks? Is it too cramped? I found that it was kind of hard for people to focus on the text when I first looked at the survey after I uploaded it. So what I did here is I'm actually turning those 5 words bold, and I'm doing that using HTML. So I'm adding at the beginning of and the end this what is that? Those aren't brackets, whatever. It's the HTML code for bold. And I just add those at the beginning and the end so that the text then stands out a little bit more. I actually didn't have that in the original thing, and I was like, this looks better. But I didn't have to go in and change 20. I literally changed this and then just uploaded it. So
It's embedded in the loop, right?
because it's embedded in the loop. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So which is like, for me, was a lot easier. So then what we have is we're going to, so remember, loop text is our actual piece of text. So what we're doing here is we're adding our header. So this is the please read the following piece of text, or sorry, the header label, which is question descriptive block, and then please read the following piece of text, and 2 line breaks. And we're using insert row, and we're basically pushing them, basically making it row 1 and row 2. So now you have the header label, the header text, and then our piece of text. Does that make sense? Cool. Then the rest of this is literally just our binding each piece in. So we have our label for question 1, we have our question 1 text, and then we have our choices, and all it's doing is just tacking them on at the end. That's it. We do that for question 2. You could do that for as many questions as you wanted here. This you could do this for only 1. If you wanted more header information, you could add that. Like, all you need to know is that if you want to add something before your piece of text, you're going to want to use insert row, and you're going to want to make sure that you're adding it in the right order. And if you want to add something after your piece of text, you're going to want to put it as an rbind after. That's it. Then all we do is we take our loop text. Oh, sorry, I added a page break at the end. That's the last thing I added. Then what we want to do is we want to take our loop text, which is our basically whole thing. I believe it's like a 38 line data frame now, something like that. And we add it to survey DF. And again, we don't want these in different columns because we're basically just making one long text document. So we just want it tagged on at the end. And we loop through that. And that is basically the whole thing. At the end, I add a couple more descriptive things. So I'm just adding that this is an advanced format document. I didn't find that this mattered, but I figured better to be more thorough than less thorough. And I say this is a new block and it's a multiple choice block. You could name it whatever you wanted. You could name it consent. You could name it what, I mean, you would never do this for a consent form, but like, you know, yeah, it's a lot of work for a consent form. But you can name it whatever you wanted. And then you just insert that as in the first 2 rows of the whole document. And then all you do is you write it to, you write the survey DF to a TXT file. You separate by periods. I don't think that makes much of a difference. You don't want row names. That is important. And you don't want quotes. because otherwise R will save this all as a character vector and every single thing will be in quotes and none of it will work. So you have to make sure that quote is set to false. So let's really quickly run this loop.
I
Yes.
have a question. Can I ask it on your computer? Okay, so imagine you wanted, so you have your 200 questions. Imagine for like 50 of them, you wanted another loop. Would you embed a loop in the loop, or can you run just consecutive loops or separate loops? Or would you run like a series of loops?
You could, yeah. The other thing you could do is you could just separate, what would probably make the most sense to me and how I would do it just for like my own clarity is I would just have like this loop here, which I just shrunk down, and then I would add a block and then I would create another loop.
Okay,
And then that would include the extra questions and that would be in a different block. I would probably put them in different blocks. And then when you upload it to Qualtrics, it'll say like, oh, here's like your block with only 3 questions per piece of text. And here's your
Mhm.
block with 4 questions per text.
okay. Does it matter the order? Because it's gonna apply that logic to like, say, question 5 is in 4 loops or something. Does it matter? Do you want to go from like biggest to smallest, or does it matter?
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm trying to think like, so what if you had, say, your loops like this where they're identical, and then you had another set of questions that if answer is no, then goes to second question, and then the second question is identical for all of them. But that's only true for, say, 10 of your 200 questions. And so you want to create a loop that creates that kind of like if then statement embedded within it.
Ooh,
Is that possible?
I don't know if that's possible. So I
Okay.
will say one thing about this QSS, or sorry, the advanced format TXT is it does absolutely nothing with survey flow.
Oh,
No survey flow.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
that answers my question.
You can't force text, you can't create sliders. There's a bunch of stuff you can't do.
Okay.
But if you want to like, it's really for like, if you're doing these like
Repetitive.
tasks, like you're having somebody try to look at chat data and you're like, I have all of this data and I want to
Yeah.
randomize it. And then I want to have it be like, are these people getting along? Yes or
Or
no?
like face data where they
Or
see,
face
like,
data,
400 faces or
something like that. Exactly. You know,
Okay.
you can do it this way and it just takes some of the work off your plate, but you still have to go in and create your survey
Got it.
flow.
Okay,
Yeah.
that answers my question. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. It's I hope that they actually continue to expand this because
Yeah.
I find it's so helpful and it seems really underutilized in Qualtrics, and there's a lot of functionality it doesn't have, but fingers crossed the Qualtrics will expand it because I think it's really helpful. So let's run this loop really quickly. It's done. Like it's really that fast. Yeah. Now I'm gonna just add these last little things and we're gonna write it. So the way that you would upload this, I'm gonna go back over here, is you go into your edit TXT. So I have it uploaded already, but I will show you how you do it. So you wanna go to import export. You want to import survey, choose your file, and you just want to hit the sample survey TXT, whatever you named it, and open. And now you want to import. Oh, fair warning, this is a very short one. So it'll take like, probably like 15 to 20 seconds. I was uploading one that had like 800 separate questions in it. And it took like 40 minutes. Yeah. But and sometimes it won't even load that it's done. You actually have to refresh the page and then it's all there. So that's just a heads up, like don't get too discouraged. Okay, great. So now if we open this up, we can see that we have read the following piece of text, 2 line breaks. It's in bold, not a moment to think. How much semantic meaning does the above text contain? No meaning to much meaning. How negative or positive do you think this text is? And then a page break. And it does this all the way down. And I'll show you what this looks like in the preview so you can see that I'm not just making it up. Do you consent to our survey? The easiest consent form ever, yes. And now, great. So please read the following piece of text at a moment to think. How much semantic meaning does the above text contain? And you have all of these here. And you can just go through all the way. So into it, there was a very little meaning, but not a moment to think, probably a lot of meaning. And this is where like you could look here and see, okay, well, this is a little squishy. Like maybe I want to change a couple of things. Maybe I want to change the style of the survey. Also, like maybe radio buttons would be better here than blocks, something like that. And those when you change that, it changes all of the questions. So that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions before we get to our lab scrum? And like I said, everything is on GitHub. I tried to comment it pretty well, and obviously we'll have this video for reference. So play around with it, and I really hope it helps because doing all that stuff manually is kind of a drag.
Very cool.
Claire, I do have a question.
Yeah.
This was great. Thank you so much. It's an amazing way to do it. And I was curious about whether, do you think I could use this with images instead of text?
Yeah, so I don't do surveys with images, so I'm not sure. You might have to look up if people have done this, because that's not something I'm super familiar with. My instinct is no. I think that this is probably not going to work well with images. What you might be able to do is, if you're going to have 5 questions per image and 60 images, what you could do is create all your questions in this sort of document, upload those, and then take your 30 minutes and just manually upload the pictures, right? But you wouldn't have to do all of the questions with it, if that makes sense. Like you could just have a placeholder, like, image kind of thing. And then when you go in, you just delete that and put your picture in. So it probably wouldn't be like the single most efficient way to do it. And again, I hope that they continue to develop this, because I think it could be really helpful. But it would hopefully eliminate some of the time, especially if you have repetitive questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't look to me like it would work with images, especially because it's a text file. But yeah, it would be so great.
I know, right?
I have a question. I agree. Thanks, Claire, for showing this. This is really cool. I guess one question I had was, can you edit so can you give the block name and the question name within the R code?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you could set this up so that instead of a page break, that was a block, like if you wanted.
Mm-hmm. But like the label, you know what I mean? Like how you can name the labels of each question in Qualtrics. Can you edit that in R?
Could you label each question?
Yeah.
I don't know. I never do that, so I am not
like in
sure.
Qualtrics, is it just like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5? Like, is that how it is right now in Qualtrics?
I think so. Yeah, QID 4, QID 5, stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I wonder. I guess I would say look at the links in the TXT file that I put on GitHub, because they have, like, again, there's a lot more functionality. Like, this is exactly what I needed to do with this. And then I kind of was like, cool, I've figured this out. So it's possible. If you really wanted that, though, you could split it up so that each question was a different block, and then you could label the blocks.
Right. Yeah.
I bet you could just specify it, like question, MC. I don't know. That seems
I mean, I think, yeah. My guess is you can, but I just don't know. So I don't want to say that you can and then have it be that you actually cannot.
Yeah. And then another question I had was when we were discussing, like, what happens if things are crunched, and you could always just do one text thing, upload it and check it. Could you just like make the question in Qualtrics and play around with the formatting until it looks how you want it, and then be like, okay, I want this kind of scale with these kinds of labels, and that looks good. And then that's what I'll just do in my R code, so that you could are working in that quote unquote preview mode live in Qualtrics, like you normally build surveys. And then once you have the question looking at as you want it, then you would go and build it.
This is what Ashley was asking also, like, can you download Qualtrics to this format? And again, I think the answer is no. I think you kind of just have to play around with it. And it's just trial and error. I will say it's a little bit nice that you can just use HTML code in it. And that helps you kind of visualize what it's going to be. But yeah, no, I don't think you can just create your question, then download and copy the format, because I don't think it downloads as this type of it's like this weird like pseudo code. It's not quite code, but it's like,
Yeah,
you know what
it's
I
like
mean?
a Qualtrics specific kind of formatting.
Exactly. So I would,
Um,
like I said, I wouldn't bother memorizing this. I think just like reference it when you need it, you know, and then like pull in what's helpful.
Right. And then the last question, sorry to have so many questions, is maybe it's already what Tess was asking about the survey flow functionalities. So for example, like here we randomly sampled text. So you're randomly displaying headlines or Alice in Wonderland quotes or whatever, right? But then if we wanted to like have that, let's say, randomly presented to participants so that participants didn't all see the same order of random headlines, you'd still have to do that in Qualtrics, right?
Yeah, you'd want to make them blocks instead of questions, and then you would want to randomize the blocks. Yeah, because again, if you randomize the questions, you'll screw up your like descriptive question. Like it could be like the does this make semantic sense? Like, please read this text. Like that all could be messed up.
Yeah, the order of
questions.
yeah.
So you'd
Yeah, I
want to
think so.
basically just add that, like I have it at the very bottom, the block is MC block. You'd want to just put that in your loop so that each chunk of questions was like its own block, and then you could randomize the blocks.
Right, yeah. I think you might be able to custom randomize where you like leave out one question that doesn't get randomized, but then randomize the other two or something. But yeah, no, that makes sense that you'd still have to like do that in Qualtrics and not like in the code part.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny when you're asking me these things because I'm like, necessity is the mother of invention, and I don't understand Qualtrics. So I figured this out instead. But it sounds like there's a lot of functionality that Qualtrics has embedded that maybe this can't do. But this is fast, which is helpful.
Yeah, that looks super helpful. Thanks.
Absolutely. And again, please let me know if you have questions, like other questions, feel free to email me.